So, this past week we got the announcement of the Saga Museum from some very prominent Star Wars collections, and it made me think: how do we preserve our own Star Wars fandom? That's being the question this week for Jabba's Court. But I think first of all we should probably um, learn a little bit more about what the Saga Museum is up to.
Yeah,
So basically, the announcement of the Saga Museum was the collections of Steve Sansweet, Gus Lopez, Duncan Jenkins, and Lisa Stevens and Vic Wertz and Rich Solomon announcing that their collections, which we know probably better as Rancho Obi-Wan, Boba Cabana, Sasonian, and the Imperial Archives. I managed to say that right. That's the first time today. Um,
you did well there.
yeah,
Very well.
are all going to join forces and form what they're terming the Saga Museum of Star Wars Memorabilia, bringing together four of the world's largest Star Wars collections, over 1.5 million objects, into a new public museum, um, hoping for it to be 200,000 square feet, have things like a store, a cafe, event facilities, indoor theatres, and become something not just as a Star Wars memorabilia museum, but something a really useful part of the community as well, I think,
Yeah.
from the way that they announced it. Um, and their target is over the next couple of years is to really develop this idea, um, create designs, find out where they're going to locate it, what's going to be the economic impact, and all that type of thing. So a huge amount of work, and they've already been kind of developing this idea in private, I believe, for a few years as well. And Mr. Newbold also making a comment there that's not going to show because it's hiding behind my graphics. But he's talking to Steve Sansweet and Lisa Stevens this week on Making Tracks as well. Um,
Fantastic.
so check out the Making Tracks podcast on your podcatcher of choice. Just look for Phantom Tracks Radio, and they'll be able to answer probably some questions that Mark's got from us to what the Saga Museum is going to be and how they're going to go about this process over
Yeah.
the next few years. Um, so a great initiative, a great idea, and it resolves, a massive issue, I think, for um, those collectors in terms of they're the top tier of collections, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure
Yeah. The creme de la
it
creme.
raises its head for them as much as it raises its head for us. What are we going to do with our collections? Do we sell them? At what point do you sell them? Can you how do you deal with that? And you've been changing how you collect a little bit, Paul, and
Yeah, I've just become more focused, I suppose. And I think that's what a lot of collectors eventually do. They find some specific area of collecting and they stick with that. And then they look at the things that they've got that don't fit into that. And it's an opportunity then to move that on to somebody else that will get the enjoyment out of it. I mean, like I say, this weekend I was selling at Echo Base. And there were two or three occasions where the Black Series figures I was able to sell on to somebody else, where they were saying that these were gaps in their collections. They were finishing off part of their collection, and you could, the joy that they were getting. You just know that you were moving it on to somewhere where it was going to be appreciated. So that's nice. But I think with the people that are coming together here to form this, thankfully they had the foresight all those years ago to collect the things that they did. Um, and one of the beautiful things about this is that when they come to try and raise funds to be able to put this thing together, there's going to be duplicates galore between the collections. So, how many carded Luke Skywalkers do you need? I know everybody wants loads, but but if it's exactly the same figure, if it is card style A and between them they've got three, well, you can help to support things by auctioning two of those off. And I think that's what will happen. There will be some massive opportunities here for other people to acquire things that they perhaps didn't think that they were ever going to see. I mean, I'm using that as a very, very sort of easy example, but there's going to be things that crop up that just don't come on the market.
yeah. As Jack says, that he's going to pass his down to his kids. It's up to them whether they keep it or sell it. Won't be around to see it, but have some happiness in the memories or cash.
Yeah.
Great way to put it. I couldn't pass mine down to anyone on the sheer basis of they'd sell it for less than it's worth. But it's to me, when I was thinking of this question for this week's Jabba Court, I was thinking, does it extend beyond collectibles? So they're doing the Saga Museum, which is going to be a museum of Star Wars collectibles. That's one aspect of fandom.
Yeah.
Another huge aspect of fandom is the experiences, and
Yes. Yeah.
you know, you know, Jack and Mark have both mentioned sort of like the internet of Star Wars fandom and having some kind of archive, all the podcasts and videos that people do. How do we sort of preserve what Star Wars fandom is and was? Because it's certainly changing, and it's probably a sad time, I think, at this point in time where things feel very down and negative when in reality this should be the golden age for Star Wars because we're getting more content than ever.
Yeah.
So how do we preserve the good of our Star Wars fandom and our experiences?
That's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, there are those out there that would argue at the moment that we're perhaps getting quantity above quality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Personally, I've enjoyed most of the stuff that's come out. Um, Preserving that is easy enough in itself because it's probably going to end up forever on something like Disney Plus or whatever that platform eventually turns into. The things that are going to be more difficult are, your fan stuff, your stuff like Fanta Tracks and other podcasts, etc. Um, but thankfully, you can find us quite easily on YouTube and different things.
Yeah.
I normally have a quick look after the show's finished just to see that we weren't too bad.
Mark's suggesting that he'll have everything buried with me. Any volunteers to dig the hole? He also making a comment, his old lightsaber stuff still in his hard drive. Love to have it still out there in some fashion. We need to talk,
Yeah,
get that
yeah.
happening. I can build, you can provide the content, I can build the platform.
There you go.
Said that once before. We've lived to regret it and it became Father Tracks.
Hey,
Well,
Brian, if you build it, they will come. There you
build it, they will come. Um, as Jack says, it's all to do with promotion, keeping it going. Yeah, it's. I think having a space like the Saga Museum intends to be like a centre of the collectibles, and with the community aspect around it, I think's a very solid way that our fandom's preserved.
Yeah.
Especially because you've got collections like Gus Lopez's, who's got the weird and wonderful, quirky elements from the food items and all that kind of stuff that you love to see. Um, but he's also got the high end ticket items as well that you see coming up in auctions.
Yeah.
Um,
He's got props and
yeah,
costumes and all sorts,
on the
hasn't he? Yeah.
opposite side of that, you've got the likes of Steve Sansweet. That's a huge part of his collection is fan built um, uh, items and uh, memorabilia. And so a huge part of the fandom's remembered just through that, the different memorabilia created for different events. And so I think the Saga Museum is a great place um, to build from. And it's like, and it's not just about what was manufactured, it's what the fans did and what experiences the fan helped create, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be quite different to the Lucas Museum, where that is very much a sort of more of a white collar type of museum, if you know what I mean. That's going to be sort of quite formal in many respects. Whereas this feels like it's going to be something very much driven by the fans for the fans of collecting. Um, so I think the beauty of it is, like you say, Gus's collection has got some of those absolutely fantastic screen used props and costumes. I think when we were last over at Farthest From, when Gus was there and he gave a talk, he was talking about the Death Star that he found, and it was like in the most obscure places. Um, and so there's the stories behind the finds as well, which are
Yeah,
fascinating. Um, and everybody who goes to a museum like that, if they still own or if they've owned in the past a bit of Star Wars memorabilia, automatically it takes you back to the moment that you first saw it or you were gifted it. Um, I mean, even now when I go to events in this country and you see the cardboard Death Star playset, it takes me back to when I was 8 and I had that for my birthday, you know. And it was you know, I wish I'd still got that, but still, never mind. You
Jack
live, you learn.
point as well here, and Imagine Insurance in that museum, and that's one of the
Yeah,
points that you know that they're going public with this just now.
yeah,
The four collections coming together is just a starting point of making this happen. That
mm,
creates your day one of how do we make this venture happen? Well, we've got the items,
yeah,
how it's funded, how it's created, what it hosts, all that's up in the air and for discussion
mm,
over the next few years. And it's not just dependent on these four collections. It is really for the whole of Star Wars fandom to get behind it and make this
yeah.
a success. One, in terms of launching it, but two, supporting it when it's going.
And I've never been fortunate enough to go over to Rancho for the gala for Rancho Obi-Wan. Um, what does that mean for that in the future? Does that come to an end? Do we, in the intervening years, do we have a number of events there to raise funds?
Yeah,
Um, and you know, I think this is a sensible thing for, particularly for Steve Sansweet to have done because he's probably the oldest of the bunch. Um, and you know, he wants to leave behind a meaningful legacy, and that's what this will be.
yeah, definitely. Um, and Jack makes a point. Echo Base this past week in the UK as well. When you on about collectibles, the piece of wood from Jabba's sailbarge on sale in the picture frame for 1,300. Yeah,
An
these
absolute
when you talk
bargain.
about screen used props, it can be wild and wonderful, and the prices could be
Yeah.
insane as well.
A bargain. There you
Um, your collection, what's your plans, Paul?
go. Well, so I've been selling off my Black Series only because when the when the debacle came about, when they stopped selling the Black Series figures in boxes without windows, because I'm an inbox collector.
Yeah,
When that happened, um, I kind of guessed that they would come back and realize that, you know, that would put a lot of people off. And they did eventually come back to putting a window on the box. But by the time they did that, I'd had such a break from collecting them that it didn't seem any point in rejoining and then trying to get all those that I'd missed out on. So for me, the Black Series no longer was of interest. But I think they're great figures. But I now want to go back to finishing off the holes in my original Star Wars collection from back in the day, which I probably dropped out of partway through the second wave of Return of the Jedi figures in about 84. So I've now got pretty much everything apart from the last 4 or 5 from the last 17. So I'd like to say I think most collectors they get to a point where they have focus. So I just want to finish that off more for nostalgia reasons than anything else. Um,
anyone
and
at
then
the place,
also
did anyone actually witness Mark Newbold sell something? I want to be there just for that experience, but
I tell you how bad it got, Bry. He was talking to somebody, and I sold something from Mark's table to somebody else because I just don't think he got it in his heart to do it. I'm still convinced whatever was sold from that table, he would then walk around the show, find somebody else that was selling it for £5 more, and buy it off them.
I was thinking he'd be do more. I'll sell you. I'll do trades. So two of them for one of these. So he
Yeah.
ends up with more in his collection. But yeah,
No,
my collection. I'm going to burn it. I'm going to burn it all. Nobody's getting it. Nobody's going to benefit from it but me. It's mine. I can't take it with me. Nobody's having it.
so the only people's eyes that will get joy will be your own. There
Yeah,
you
but the good thing is, other comic and book collectors, value collections will go up in value because there's one less of them exists.
Exactly.
So if you've got one of the 6 comics ever printed that I've got, suddenly it's going to be one of 5. Think of the wonderful contribution to the
Come
fandom.
on, Bry. You're sitting on a fortune there, mate. You need to get some of that shifted.
There you go. Jack says he went to buy something off Mark, but he said it's just for display and not for sale. That I can believe. That's how you preserve your fandom. Go to a show and just display it.
I think Mark just wanted a day out. That's all it was.
And we were talking about Black Seas, Chris David as well, chiming in. We wouldn't want the husband to do the Black Seas to the detriment of the vintage collection. Doesn't know if there's any noise in slowing down the 3.75 range, but just releases for the vintage collection seem so far and few between, especially not giving us background aliens from Jabba the Hutt's palace, etc., which is very true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting this current drive for Tatooine as well, and it's across multiple sort of lines. Um, I do think that anybody that's pre-ordered the Cantina set, should they wish to sell that, I don't think they'll have any problems in making quite a nice profit on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's it for this week on Jabba's Court. As you know, Jabba's Court is part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all the latest Star Wars news, streaming every Sunday at 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York, and comes out every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Father Tracks TV as well.